All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this primer video on some of the resources you have for systems programming class. There's a lot of them. Obviously, you have the class with all the slides. You have office hours you can go to. You have labs where you can ask questions most weeks. Sometimes it's a little harder to do that in grading weeks, but um, you have a lot of other resources available that can make this class a lot easier. And I'd like to um, demonstrate just a few of them. There's more out there, but these ones are invaluable, and I highly suggest that everyone use them. So first of all, we have, and I should probably also mention Stack Overflow you're also allowed to use, I'm pretty sure. So you can use Stack Overflow, just be careful. You know, the line between academically dishonest and not is quite clear. So just be careful. Don't go crazy with it. But you can use Stack Overflow for looking up how to use some function or something like that. But anyways, I want to start with regexer. I talk about this a bit in another video, in the regex video, but this is just a really good program for working with regexes. It's all online. In this case, I created a regex that we have this little dialog here. What it's looking for is an H, followed by either an E or an O, it's a character set, so it's one of these two. Then it can be anything, except it cannot end with an E and then a line break. So in this case, hello, how are selected, howdy is selected, but horrible isn't because it ends with an E. So yeah, really good little program to work with. You can do like tests with it. So you can add like unit tests basically to test out your regex. And once you have this, you can basically just put it right into your C regex. The one thing I will note has these regexes include backslashes. In a C string, that's an escape string. So you'll have to, before putting it in C, escape it here. Now that's going to make it stop working here, as you can see. But that will be the version that will work in C. You have to just make sure that the strings are compatible. So you can write it in here and then convert it into a workable C string. Draw.io, or diagrams.net now. This is fantastic. I love this program so much. First of all, you can use it as a virtual whiteboard. You can create all these flowcharts and shapes and stuff. You can group, this is all grouped together, so if I just grab it and it'll all move as one. You'll see in a lot of my other like lab videos, I use this to show off ideas. I use this for writing papers. Let's see here. Yeah, here's from one of my papers. You get something like this. This is just fantastic. I love this thing. Highly recommend using it just to map out ideas. Recursion trees can be good in here. It's just really nice to have. Even better for teaching, but also really good just for understanding your own ideas and planning out your programs. So this is actually a combination one. This is going to be a combination of this or man7.net, I think it is, or just the man pages you find on Linux. So if you type in Linux man and then some command or some C function or whatever, it will give you a manual, that's what man page stands for, of what's going on, how that function works and how you should use it. This is an online version of that. There's another one called, I think, Man7. But you could do wait. And we can go down to wait2 here. It'll put them all in there anyways. So we can look now at this C wait command, we can look exactly the types that it's expecting. By the way, if you ever see a -t, this could be a, you'll see this a lot as like a SIZT, that's size T, size type. Don't worry much. These types are usually just an integer or a character or something like that that has been type deffed to have the specific name. It's not going to operate much differently than one would expect. So like in a PID, it's just an integer. It's just an integer. It's the PID that you'll be getting. And it'll usually be coming from somewhere else. Like, for example, you might use fork before this wait PID to get a new child process. And then the PID that returns is what you'll put into wait PID. You'll also sometimes see like int status. In this case, what it's doing is it's actually asking for a pointer, and then it's going to change the pointer as a sort of second return value. So that's an option for you. You'll also see a lot of int options, and usually these are going to be, you'll have lists of bitwise OR things. So you'll see like, do I have an option here? I don't have a great example. Oh, yeah, yes, they do. Here. So you'll see something like this for options, and in a lot of these. And what these are is these are just static bytes, or like a static byte or several bytes. And you're ORing them to say that you want multiple options. It's like having lots of Booleans, except you want to have it a nice compact space as possible. So you just have a char, and each bit is going to be its own Boolean. And you can combine those with a bitwise OR operator here. So that's how you do options. You'll see that a lot in like opening files or things like that. And the other thing here is they usually have an example, like here. So you can, if you want to know how to use something, you can go check an example. We'll often give you an example in your code as well, but there'll also usually be one here if you want to take another look. If you want something a little more contemporary, something newer, C++.com is really good. Also, CPP reference. These are both good websites. I prefer C++.com, but either's good. This has tutorials. This has reference data. So like another one we can do. Instead of wait, let's do fork. So it's going to look for forks. This is in the forum. So the best way to do this is actually like this. Fork. There we go. Actually, that's man page. This is actually, this is a C one, not a C++ one. So is this? Yeah, it's just a forum. So you can use the forum too. It's usually got examples around. But how about string? There we go. That's an actual C++ thing instead of a C thing. There we go. Awesome. So you can see our type. See that it's a type def of a basic string, but we don't need to worry about that. We can see that it's from the standard library, std. We can see its member functions. So we got constructors, we got operators that we've set different assignments for. You can check, like we can see that we have this operator for access. That is our array notation. So we can actually do array notation for strings. It's got all these options here. We have a video going over some of these as well, but you can look through this, and this has a lot of different libraries available. You can go to algorithm, all sorts of different algorithms that are available in the standard library. And this is just an other too. Like there's all sorts of other things you can look at here. This is really good. And this usually has examples too. For example, let's go to regex. Let's go to normal regex, basic regex. Still not finding a good example. Let's do regex replace. Do we have a good example here? Yes. So often these will have examples too. We can see an example of regex replace being used here. All sorts of information is available, including like different overloads of the class, everything. So yeah, C++.com and cppreference.com, both good. Now let's say if you're less looking for a reference and more of a tutorial on how to use something, the examples aren't enough. You really need something more concrete. And maybe a little discussion of the concepts as well. You're just generally fuzzy on the idea. If you're lucky, you'll be able to find something on Geeks for Geeks. Great website. Usually just best to Google for it because the search feature is pretty bad. Signals in C. So here's their little tutorial here on signals. They talk about signals. They'll have little diagrams. They'll have lots of example code of different types. Can we go to the fork one? Is that on here somewhere? Let's see if it's gonna work. Yeah, here we go. So we have fork. It talks about fork and how that can create new processes and everything. It's got nice little ASCII trees and all that fun stuff. So it usually has related articles too, which is nice. Great website if you're just kind of fuzzy on an idea. And again, this is stuff that you can come to office hours for, but most of the time it's going to be more, usually office hours, you don't have infinite time. You're going to be given a window in which we can help you, and then we'll stop helping you to help someone else. Or maybe right now it's during COVID still a little bit, but once we get more normal, it'll still be like we're hopping between people. You want to use that time you have in office hours and in lab as efficiently as possible. So to do that, it's usually best to try these kind of things first. Try to figure it out on your own. You'll learn more that way too. And then when you run into problems from this, or you're not understanding something in this, then you can go do your office hour and say, hey, this is what I tried. Here's what I was looking at. What am I missing here? And then we'll be able to help you a lot more quickly that way. Or if it's debugging, a lot of the office hours are going to be debugging, helping you look for bugs, that sort of thing. Okay, so yeah, Geeks for Geeks is good. The other one is the slides, class slides, obviously. These, I doubt these will change anytime soon. They've always been one giant slide deck. The nice thing though is you can use the search function to look through for stuff like Unix. Yeah, let's try what's Unix gonna. Yeah, eventually you can. It takes a bit to load some of these. It'll also be a lot faster if you download it because it will just load most of it into memory. But yeah, this is good. There's usually a whole bunch of examples in these. They go over the concepts pretty well, especially if you miss part of a class, or if, like me personally, I can't pay attention in classes. I haven't been able to since high school. I'm gonna drift off and start looking at something else. So having online slides like this is really, really nice to have. And by the way, you might be thinking, every class has that. And currently every class does, because online teaching. But a lot of classes in the past I've taken, especially grad level, just don't. You just have to go to class and figure out from there, and the professor won't release the slides. And that's not fun. That's really tough if you're like me and you can't pay attention well. But this helps incredibly because you can go back and study on your own time and get help on projects with this. You'll be able to access this from the main site for sure, but it's good stuff. The other thing, I don't have it open here, but this channel that you're watching this on, assumedly, has a lot of videos for this class, including a video for each lab going over what the lab expects of you. Those will be updated on an as-needed basis, and we'll usually have something in the comments or descriptions that'll say what semesters like this is good for. So you use those, go through them, because there's slight changes in projects, but some of them aren't big enough changes that they require a major change in the video, and some of them are. Some of them are like a larger version or a smaller version of a project that has to have its own video, basically. But yeah, that website's good. It's also got a lot of extras that are things like, besides this primer, even the whole primer series is on here, as is like, we have one thing that goes over lists and different kinds of lists in C that you can use. It's really helpful for Lab 1. We have a thing on GDB. I think I might incorporate that into the primer series, but we'll see. But yeah, these videos, I suggest using them. They're really helpful, especially, again, if you can't pay attention to lab too well. Lab's still a lecture, and that can be tough to pay attention to the whole time, especially when they're covering some pretty in-depth topics. So it's good to be able to look at those videos, and I suggest watching them for each lab. And lastly, I want to talk about what you'll see at the top of the lab. This is for the shell lab. This is probably going to be an old version. I've also kind of hidden what you're actually going to get down here by zooming in a lot. But you'll usually have this little bar at the top. Now, this is very useful to you for a few reasons. First of all, you'll have an FAQ. This will have a bunch of information from previous semesters that people have had problems with. If you have some weird bug, I wouldn't start by Piazza posting. You can do that, but what I would suggest doing is going to the FAQ first, see if it's in there, and if it is in there and there's an answer and it fixes your problem, then jump on Piazza and just leave a note. But you use Piazza however you want, but I suggest starting with the FAQ. Take a look there, and we can help you out if that doesn't work too. Additional notes is also something similar. It's usually, I just kind of read both. The structure of them is a bit different, but they both kind of serve the same purpose. I think they were just written at different times. But both of these are really good resources on most labs. These grading forms, though, too, are also something you should be reading well before the end of the lab. Because a lot of people will look at the grading form right before they're about to do grading. And then they'll find that part of the lab they didn't do. They had missed it or something. And these grading forms, I'm not saying they're 100% of how we're grading you. Sometimes we do have like offline tests or even fully offline graded labs. Usually we don't do that, but sometimes we do. This is 99% of what the grading is. We're not going to diverge from this with a particularly new difficult test at any point. We're not going to be going very far from the grading form. So if you look at a grading form and it says, test this, test that, see if this has this output, that is almost step for step what we are going to do as TAs when we're grading you. So what you should do on every single lab before you're even done, probably, go through and test each of these, run each of these different tests that we have there, and see what your score is. And most likely your score is going to be, your final score is going to be exactly that score. So use that grading form. It's really useful. Often it'll be in parts like this as we grade out different parts on different days. Sometimes it'll just be one. And I think that's it for resources for right now. I might make a follow-up to this video if I can think of some more good ones, but these are the big ones. Yeah, I'd make use of these, make use of the actual lab handouts. That'll be very in-depth. Make use of the videos, make use of all these good websites that make life easier. And good luck. Peace. Hello, I'm back, and I forgot one of the best resources. So you'll find this on the website. This is Gustavo's book. It is a book based on the class, or more accurately, the class is based on the book. I think somewhere all the chapters are online, but at the very least, we have these ones. These are a good start, and you can go look for the other ones somewhere. I'm pretty sure the whole book's just released online somewhere. But the important thing is this book has all sorts of useful stuff, like the slides. It's kind of an expanded version of the slides. So, for example, writing your own shell. You can find the chapter of the book that talks about writing your own shell and has a lot of the information that's really helpful to you. Not just this sort of like PDF useful stuff, but code. Now, I do have one piece of advice for the code. You are free to not follow it. Statistically, a lot of you will not follow it, but I think you should. And if you don't, you are only making life harder for yourself. What a lot of people will do is not understand their code. They'll take the code that they found here or in the slides, which you're allowed to do. You're allowed to take code from official class sources. It's not an academic dishonesty thing. But you'll take it and not know it, not know what it's doing really. Maybe even know a little bit what it's doing, but not fully know what it's doing. And that is going to make life a lot harder because none of this code you're given is going to be foolproof. A lot of it will be incomplete. Some of it will even not quite work anymore. Some of it's older code. But the idea presented in it will always be about correct. So you can trust this stuff enough to understand what's going on here. For example, with this Lex and Yak code, this tokenizing is useful. You can look at this and understand it and use this to expand your own shell. However, if you don't understand what all of this means at the time you're doing this lab, there'll be class on a lot of this stuff, and you'll have to do some of your own research probably. If you don't understand what this means, you're not going to be able to expand on it fully. And we can help you with the concepts. Us as you come to office hours lab, we will happily help you with the concepts. But if you've got a bug in your code and you say, hey, I need some help finding this bug, I don't understand my code. Or we ask you some questions and you go, oh, I don't know where that is. We're not going to be able to help you. We can only help you if you understand your own code. Not necessarily where the bug is or anything. We're not like, oh, you have to understand the bug, where the bug is for us to help you. You need to at least know what your own code is trying to do. And if you don't, what's going to happen is we'll say, all right, well, I think it's important for you to understand these concepts, and we'll start trying to tell you about the concepts of the code, and that could be very helpful to you as well. But it's not as efficient use of your time because you won't be fixing the bug then until you understand the concepts more fully. So when it comes to code you find from class resources. Feel free to use it, but it's much, much better for you if you go through and understand it first. And if you don't quite understand it, or you don't know if you understand it, you can look at the other resources available, the lab videos, the going to labs, the Piazza, all of that. The concepts are very important to get. But yeah, sorry for the rant. And I'm happy that I got to show this book because this is great. It's really helpful for a lot of this stuff. It's quite in depth. Here we go on talking about like the recursion that's used for wildcarding, and this is super useful to think about because wildcarding in the shell lab is really hard. But yeah, this book this is a good book. This is helpful. All right, actual end of the video now. Peace. Bye-bye.